Azure Active Directory B2C, or business to consumer. Let's talk about the purpose of B2C and how you can configure Azure AD B2C. This is a unique Azure AD tenant that you can provision yourself if you want to use an identity source for your own applications that you are building. Azure AD B2C is a function of Azure AD that is targeted towards developers. If you really like the features in Azure AD and you do not want to configure all these features that Azure AD has, and you're really interested in using these features within your applications, then Azure B2C is something that you might be interested in. For example, you might want to manage identities for your application that you're developing. Let's say you are developing a gaming application and users must be able to access this via web and also with mobile. The identities must be in a centralized place and you want to manage them to make things easier for your users. You also want to let them sign in with the existing identities like Facebook or Amazon or Google identity. This is a common feature in the industry to let users sign in with identities. This is what Azure B2C lets you do. As a developer, you can create your own Azure AD tenant and configure a range of identity providers that are supported. So when your users actually sign into your app, they can go through a sign-in process and use any of the supported identity providers. You can manage all the identities even though they use their own personally preferred identity provider. Let's go ahead and see how this is possible. To create an Azure B2C tenant, I'll click on Create a Resource and then type B2C in the Marketplace search box. Then click on Azure AD B2C and then just click on Create. Now you have two options, which is creating a new Azure AD B2C tenant, and the second one is linking an existing Azure AD B2C tenant to my Azure subscription. We will circle around this option in a minute, but let's go ahead and create a new Azure AD B2C tenant now. You can type the organization name as the Great Game Office and then type greatgames.onmicrosoft.com. You will see that the name here is something similar to that we have for our actual tenant ending with .onmicrosoft.com. So if I hover my mouse on my email address here, I will see the tenant name or the domain name, which is my email address without any special characters .onmicrosoft.com. Looks like this is already selected. So I'll put my mouse on this red exclamation and see the message. It says already in use by another directory. Let's type something else here. Best games. Let's see if it's there. Looks like no. I'll type Game of Horns. Let's see. Looks like that is there. I'll leave the region as United States, but you have the options to select any region that you want. And then just click on Create. It takes a while to get this directory created, so I'll pause the video and get connected once again once it is ready. So looks like that is ready. I'll go ahead and click on this little hyperlink which says click here to manage your new directory. Notice that is opening a new tab, and this is connecting to my new B2C tenant. It says we are preparing your B2C. That means it's still not active, although you can look at the options here. At this point, you got a warning that no subscription is linked to the B2C tenant or a subscription needs attention. So let's go ahead and see how you can link this B2C tenant with your subscription. To do so, I'll go back to Create a Resource section and then type B2C here. Then click on it and then finally click on Create again. Now, if you remember, we were on this screen a few minutes ago. The second option here will let me link my B2C tenant to my Azure subscription. Click on that, and then in this drop-down menu, I should be able to see my tenant. Let's see. There you go. I've got Game of Horns on Microsoft.com right here. You can select your subscription and select the resource group. Well, let's go ahead and create a new one and say lab. Say OK, and then put that in a particular resource group location. Just say East US. Alright, finally click on Create. By doing this, we have now linked the Azure B2C tenant to my subscription. While the deployment is still in progress, I'll just go and type B2C here, and then go to my tenant. Looks like the B2C tenant is linked up to my subscription. Let's go and click on go to resource, and we should be able to see all the features of our new tenant here. So this Azure B2C tenant right here is different and separate from your actual Azure AD tenant. Now, if I put my mouse again on the email address, you will see that the tenant name is something else, and the tenant that we created for B2C is different from our actual tenant. So you may ask, why do I need two tenants here? Why not use the actual tenant instead of a B2C tenant? Well, the Azure AD tenant is used for, I would say, internal usage for your internal users and with the partners for whom you want to work with. But if you have applications that is being built and you need to market that to external users, and the external users belong to external world, and you would like to have a fully isolated tenant, for that purpose you would need a B2C. Let's see how you can register the application that you're building with this tenant. I'll click on the B2C tenant settings at this time, and then you will notice that there's an application section just like the way you have it in Azure AD, and then click on add to add your applications. So if you click on this add button, you will be able to type a name of your application and whether you would like to include a web app, yes or no, and then typing the URL of your app, and then typing a random app ID URL for making it unique app ID. Well, you have another option here which is called as identity providers. So you can have the range of identity providers like Google, LinkedIn, Facebook, or Amazon. Another important section is the user flow. User flows are to do with how the users sign in. What kind of experience do you want to give to your users? What page should they see when they log in? How will they reset their passwords? So these are workflows that we would like to provide to the users. I'll click on the new user flow here to look at the options I have inside user flow. There you go. You can set up how a user experience should be to sign up and sign in, how their profiles and what kind of data or attributes you would like to store, and how the passwords are verified and reset. So Azure B2C is targeted towards developers, like I said earlier, and these developers are building applications for market. Azure AD B2C is used to create a separate, isolated environment for managing your identities. But if you'd like to provide applications for the internal users, then you can continue to use Azure AD and you do not need Azure B2C.